Johannes' family lived in a small coastal town in South Africa. Tewodros, the father, promised Johannes to take him out fishing on his 14th birthday. They had been planning a fishing trip off the coast for weeks. Johannes was excited to spend the day on the boat with his father and younger brother, Adrius, hoping to catch some big fish. Tewodros was an experienced fisherman, but it would be the first time he would take Johannes and Adrius out with him on the deeper parts of the ocean to catch some big fish. Usually, the two would only fish on the shallower parts of the water and catch small fish. Johannes woke up on his 14th birthday to the sound of his father's voice calling out to him. He couldn't wait to spend the day out on the water with his father and younger brother. They loaded up their fishing gear and set out on their small boat, the sun just beginning to rise over the horizon. The weather was perfect, with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze blowing. The water was calm, and they had been fishing for several hours, catching all sorts of fish, including yellowfin, tuna, and dorado. They spent their morning enjoying their catch and the peacefulness of the ocean. Johannes felt grateful to be spending his birthday with the two most important people in his life. As they were about to head back to shore, just after midday, something caught Johannes' eye. A shadowy figure was circling their boat, and he soon realized it was a shark. Tewodros attempted to maneuver the boat away from the shark, but it was too late. Before anyone could react, it had grabbed Johannes by the leg from the boat. The family was horrified as they watched the shark pulling Johannes underwater. Without hesitation, Tewodros dove into the water after his son, determined to save him. He could hear Johannes' screams echoing in his head as he swam towards him. As Tewodros reached his son, he saw that the shark had bitten Johannes' leg. Blood was pouring out, and Tewodros knew they had to act quickly. Tewodros pulled Johannes towards him and used all his strength to swim back to their boat. The shark was still circling them, but Tewodros knew he had to protect his son. As the two got to the edge of the boat, Adrius helped pull them both onto the boat. The shark tried to attack again, but Tewodros kicked it away with all his might. Once they were back on the boat, Tewodros and Adrius immediately began to tend to Johannes' wounds. They were horrified to see the extent of his injuries. The shark's teeth had left deep, jagged wounds all over his right leg, and blood was pouring out of him in torrents. They frantically searched for a first aid kit, but all they could find were a few bandages and some antiseptic spray. With no other options, Johannes' father knew that he had to take drastic measures to save his son's life. He grabbed a fishing knife and began cutting away at Johannes' torn flesh, trying to stem the bleeding. It was a gruesome sight, with blood and bits of flesh splattering all over the boat. Johannes' screams of agony filled the air, and his family could do nothing but watch in horror as his father tried to save him. After what felt like an eternity, the bleeding finally slowed down, and Johannes' father was able to wrap his wounds in makeshift bandages, but they knew they needed to get to the hospital quickly. Adrius was able to call for help on the radio, while Tewodros and Johannes were fighting off the shark, and luckily, there was another fishing boat nearby that responded. They helped the wounded Johannes and his family onto their boat and sped towards the shore and took him to the nearest hospital. The morning after the attack, a team of marine biologists and shark experts arrived at the hospital where Johannes was being treated. They were determined to identify the shark that had bitten him and caused such a horrific injury. Johannes' leg was heavily bandaged, and he was still in shock from the experience. But he knew that by helping the experts identify the shark, he could prevent other people from being attacked in the future. The team of experts carefully examined the bite marks on Johannes' leg. They took measurements and analyzed the pattern of the teeth marks. They also took DNA samples from the wound. Using this information, they were able to determine that the shark responsible for the attack was a great white shark. The experts continued their investigation, trying to determine why the shark had attacked Johannes. They examined the area where the attack took place and looked for any signs of unusual behavior from the shark. After several days of intense research and analysis, They discovered that the shark was likely a juvenile great white who had become disoriented and confused. The shark was probably searching for food and mistook Johannes's leg for prey. The experts worked tirelessly to share their findings with the public and educate people about the importance of shark conservation. They urged people to respect the ocean and its inhabitants and to take precautions when swimming or fishing in shark-infested waters. The attack took place near Seal Island, a well-known location for great white sharks. The island was home to a large colony of seals, which attracted the sharks to the area. Despite the potential danger, many fishermen and tourists still venture out into the waters around the island, hoping to catch a glimpse of the majestic creatures. Meanwhile, Johannes continued to recover from his injuries with the support of his family and the entire community. He was grateful for the work of the experts who had identified the shark, and he hoped that his experience could help prevent future attacks and protect both humans and sharks alike. Dr. Marie Sanchez was a marine biologist who had devoted her career to studying the behavior of bull sharks. She had spent countless hours diving in the waters off the coast of Florida, observing and documenting the movements and habits of these magnificent creatures. Bull sharks are known for their aggressive nature and their ability to thrive in both saltwater and freshwater environments, making them a particularly fascinating subject for study. Dr. Sanchez had conducted extensive research on the social behavior and movement patterns of bull sharks. She is particularly interested in their migratory patterns and had used sophisticated tracking devices to follow individual sharks as they move between different habitats. Dr. Sanchez is also interested in the feeding habits of bull sharks, which are known to be opportunistic predators, feeding on a wide variety of prey, including fish, turtles, and even other sharks. She has studied the effects of changing ocean temperatures and other environmental factors on the distribution and abundance of prey species, which in turn can impact the behavior of bull sharks. She had received a grant to study the movements and behavior of bull sharks in the Gulf of Mexico and had been meticulously planning her research for months. The Gulf of Mexico was an ideal location for Dr. Sanchez's research, as it was home to a thriving population of bull sharks. She had carefully selected a site for her dive based on her previous observations of shark activity in the area. On the day of her dive, Dr. Sanchez woke up early and prepared her equipment, checking every detail to ensure that everything was in perfect working order. She reviewed her research plan one final time, going over each step in detail to make sure that she had not overlooked anything. As she set out for the dive site, Dr. Sanchez felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She knew that studying bull sharks could be dangerous, and that even the most experienced researchers could fall victim to a sudden attack. But she was also passionate about her work and believed that the insights she would gain from her research could have a significant impact on our understanding of these fascinating creatures. Once she reached the dive site, Dr. Sanchez wasted no time in getting to work. She carefully donned her wetsuit and diving gear, checking each piece to make sure that it was secure. She then descended into the water, her heart racing with anticipation. For the next few hours, Dr. Sanchez swam through the crystal-clear waters of the Gulf of Mexico, observing and documenting the movements and behavior of the bull sharks she encountered. She used underwater cameras and tracking devices to gather data, carefully noting each observation in her research journal. She was carefully observing a group of bull sharks when she noticed one particular shark, a large female, exhibiting some unusual behavior. The shark seemed agitated and was swimming erratically, darting back and forth with alarming speed. Dr. Sanchez became increasingly concerned as the shark began to circle her movements growing more frenzied by the minute. She realized that the shark had likely been disturbed by her presence and was becoming aggressive. Despite her fear, Dr. Sanchez knew that she needed to remain calm and rational if she was going to survive the encounter. She slowly began to swim away from the shark, maintaining eye contact and making slow, deliberate movements to avoid triggering any sudden attacks. Suddenly, the shark lunged towards Dr. Sanchez, its jaws gaping wide. Instinctively, she rolled onto her back and kicked out with her feet, managing to land a blow on the shark's nose. The impact stunned the shark, and she swam away as fast as she could, trying to put as much distance between herself and the shark as possible. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she glanced back over her shoulder, expecting to see the shark hot on her trail. But to her relief, the shark seemed to have been momentarily stunned by the blow to its nose, and it did not pursue her. Instead, it circled around in the water, as if trying to decide whether or not to make another attack. Dr. Sanchez knew that she could not let her guard down, even for a moment. She stayed vigilant, keeping an eye on the shark's movements as she swam back towards the boat. But just as she was beginning to feel a sense of relief, the shark suddenly lunged towards her once again. This time, Dr. Sanchez did not have the luxury of surprise. She was ready, and she quickly twisted her body to the side, just narrowly avoiding the shark's jaws as they snapped shut in front of her face. She kicked out with her feet, striking the shark's side with all her strength. The impact seemed to stun the shark once again, and it retreated a few feet back, circling around as if weighing its options. Dr. Sanchez knew that she could not keep fending off the shark forever. She needed to make it back to the boat before the shark decided to launch another attack. With adrenaline pumping through her veins, Dr. Sanchez swam as fast as she could, her arms and legs working in perfect synchronization as she propelled herself through the water. The shark pursued her for a few more seconds before finally giving up and disappearing into the depths of the ocean. Dr. Sanchez emerged from the water, gasping for breath, but relieved to have survived the harrowing encounter. She knew that she had narrowly escaped a deadly attack, and she would never forget the lesson she had learned about the power and unpredictability of the creature she studied. The reason for the bull shark's agitation is not immediately clear to Dr. Sanchez, but bull sharks are known for their aggressive nature and unpredictable behavior, and it's possible that the shark was simply reacting to her presence in its territory. However, as Dr. Sanchez later reviewed the footage from her underwater camera, she noticed that the shark had a large fishing hook embedded in its mouth. It was possible that the hook was causing the shark's pain or discomfort, making it more aggressive and unpredictable than usual. Dr. Sanchez knew that the presence of fishing gear and other human activities in the ocean could have a significant impact on the behavior of marine animals. She made a note to investigate further and to share her feelings with local authorities and conservation groups to raise awareness about the need to protect the ocean and its inhabitants. Kai had always been drawn to the ocean. He grew up in Hawaii, spending his childhood exploring the coral reefs and learning about the creatures that lived beneath the waves. As he got older, he became fascinated with scuba diving, and he spent every spare moment honing his skills and exploring the underwater world. But there was another reason that Kai was out diving that day. He had recently started working for a local conservation organization, and part of his job involved monitoring the health of the coral reefs and the creatures that lived there. Kai was passionate about the environment and was determined to do everything he could to protect it. He knew that the oceans were facing unprecedented threats, from climate change to overfishing to pollution, and he wanted to do his part to make a difference. So when he heard that there had been reports of tiger sharks in the area, Kai knew that he had to investigate. He knew that tiger sharks were one of the ocean's most fearsome predators, but he also knew that they played a vital role in the ecosystem. Kai woke up early that morning, excited for his planned scuba diving excursion. He had been looking forward to this day for weeks, as he was planning to explore a new reef that had never been visited before. He packed his stuff and set out for the boat launch, eager to start his adventure. As he set out on his dive, Kai was focused and determined. He had his dive gear checked and double-checked, and he made sure that he was fully prepared for whatever he might encounter. He knew that the ocean was unpredictable, but he was confident in his abilities and his training. As the boat anchored, Kai suited up and prepared to enter the water. He checked his gear carefully, making sure that everything was in working order. Then, he slipped into the water, feeling the cool rush of the ocean around him. Kai began his descent, marveling at the beauty of the reef below him. He saw schools of colorful fish, vibrant coral formations, and even a few sea turtles. He felt alive and free, completely immersed in the wonders of the underwater world. As Kai was exploring the reef, he suddenly saw the dark shape of a tiger shark swimming towards him. He recognized the shark immediately and knew that he had to be careful. His heart began to race as the shark circled around him, its sharp teeth glinting in the sunlight. He slowly backed away from the shark, trying to keep some distance between himself and the predator. But the shark was persistent and continued to circle around him. Kai tried to remain calm, remembering his training and how to handle shark encounters. Kai knew that he had to keep his wits about him. He tried to keep his breathing slow and steady, hoping that the shark would eventually lose interest and swim away. But then, without warning, the shark suddenly lunged towards him. Kai felt a sharp pain in his arm as the shark's teeth sank into his flesh. He kicked and flailed, trying to fight off the shark, but it was too strong. As the shark continued to bite down on his arm, Kai remembered the small knife that he always carried with him. With all his strength, Kai plunged the knife into the shark's eye. The shark let go of him immediately, thrashing in pain. Kai swam away as fast as he could, his arm throbbing with pain. He knew that he had to get back to the surface as quickly as possible. He was bleeding profusely from the wound on his arm and was in severe pain. He managed to grab onto a nearby buoy and called for help. As he waited, Kai tried to keep his breathing steady, trying not to panic. He knew that he was lucky to have survived the attack and was grateful for his training and quick thinking that had saved his life. Finally, a nearby boat heard his cries for help and rushed over to rescue him. They pulled him aboard and immediately called for emergency services. Kai was rushed to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery to repair the damage to his arm. The doctors managed to stop the bleeding and stabilize his condition, but Kai still had a long road to recovery ahead of him. Over the next few days, Kai remained in the hospital, receiving treatment for his injuries. He underwent multiple surgeries to repair the damage to his arm and had to undergo physical therapy to regain his strength and mobility. Despite the pain and discomfort, Kai remained in good spirits. He was grateful for the outpouring of support and well wishes from his family, friends, and fellow divers. He knew that he was lucky to have survived the attack and was determined to make a full recovery. As he slowly regained his strength, Kai began to reflect on the experience. He knew that he had come face to face with one of the ocean's most fearsome predators and had managed to survive through quick thinking and training. He also knew that he had a responsibility to share his story and to use it as a teaching moment for others. So Kai began to speak out about his experience, sharing his story with local schools, dive clubs, and conservation organizations. He talked about the importance of respecting the ocean and its inhabitants, and he stressed the need for education and awareness about the dangers of the open water. Despite the trauma of the experience, Kai refused to give up his passion for diving. He knew that the ocean was full of danger, but it was also full of wonder and beauty, and he was determined to continue exploring its depths, no matter what dangers lay ahead.